Hi, I'm Michael Newrock, and this is a trend trade buy example as a conservative trend type on the 4-hour time frame. So this is the example that I want to go over. I'll just place the indicators of where the entry occurs. Now, of course, the signal is created on the previous bar to where the Trend Profiteer displays the arrow, and that's because it only displays the arrow as a valid trade at the close of the candle, so it's therefore placed at the beginning of the next candle. So to have a conservative trend trade buy, we need to have an overall trend direction of up or buy only, and that is as a result of 4 or more of the high time frame indicators being upward. In this case, there are 4, so it gives us an overall direction of up. We need to have a crossover of the moving averages. So yellow moving average must have crossed over the slow moving average, which it has clearly. The trend follower must be green. The RSI must be above 50. On an aggressive trade, it only needs to be 50 or above. But in a conservative trade, we do need to see it above 50. MACD needs to be above the 0 line, as with the aggressive trend trade, but it also needs to be green, and it needs to be above the signal line, which in this case it is. And then finally, the white stochastic line must be above the blue stochastic line. So all those rules are in place. We'd place our stop below the slow moving average. It's the gray moving average, around 90 pips. I always say give it a little more room. So 100 pips, and you have full customization abilities in the Trade Assistant to place the stop dynamically a certain amount of pips, in this case below that gray moving average. So let's leave it at say 100, and then looking upward, we've got 100 pips being hit here, giving us a 1-to-1 reward to risk ratio, and 200 pips right about here, which gives us a 2-to-1 reward to risk ratio. So for the 100 pips that we risked, we generated 200 pips on this particular example. This was actually a very nice strong trade and hardly went against the position. On the 4-hour, you can expect to have fairly large stop loss positions, but it is all relative because, of course, the opportunity is to generate higher returns. The smaller the time frame, the smaller the stops, but typically the smaller the rewards, sorry, unless you can hang in there for the trade as long as possible. But we'll go over all of that in other lessons. And that concludes the trend trade conservative buy trade on the 4-hour time frame. Until next time, good trading, live well, and I'll see you soon. Hi, I'm Michael Newrock, and this is a trend trade conservative sell trade example on the 4-hour time frame. This is the example that we're looking at. So I'll just place my markers here. Alrighty, so the signal bar, the bar prior to the Trend Profiteer display arrow, is the bar that we're concerned with that gives the signal. Obviously, Trend Profiteer will provide all of these alerts for you in MetaTrader and by email if you wish, and to your mobile device by notification. However, it's great to be able to get a good understanding of the system that you're trading. Alrighty, so first of all, we need to see an overall trend direction of down, and we need to have 4 or more of the 6 high time frame indicators pointing down for that to occur. In this case, we have 4, which is good enough. The trend follower is changed to red. The yellow moving average is below the gray moving average. The price is below the yellow moving average. The RSI is below the 50. The MACD histogram must be below the 0 line. It must be red, and it must be below the signal line. And finally, the white stochastic trend line must be below the blue stochastic line. So in this case, all criteria are met for a trend trade conservative sell. We'd place the stop just above the gray moving average. That's a slow moving average. So 30 pips, say 40 pips. And in this case, it really didn't go against the position more than a couple of pips on the following bar. 40 pips would have been a first target here, giving us a 1-to-1 reward to risk ratio. 80 pips just here, giving us a 2-to-1 reward to risk ratio. After this consolidation period, we would get down to 120 pips here, giving us a 3-to-1 reward to risk ratio. 160 pips would give us a 4-to-1 reward to risk ratio, and 200 pips here, 5-to-1 reward to risk ratio, and okay, and we've got a 240 pips for a 6-to-1 reward to risk ratio, and even went down a little bit to its final ultimate low. But 6-to-1 reward to risk ratio, that's for the 40 pips that we risked. We generated on this example a potential maximum of 240 pips. So that concludes this example for a trend trade conservative sell on the 4-hour time frame. Till next time, good trading, live well, and I'll see you soon. Hi, I'm Michael Newrock, and this is a swing within a trend conservative buy trade on the 4-hour time frame. This is the example that I want to go over, so I'll just place my markers here. The signal bar, of course, that alerted us to the Trend Profiteer swing within a trend. And you can see here, to start off with, we need to have an upward direction on the overall trend direction. The only way to achieve that is to have 4 or more of these high time frame indicators pointing up. In this case, we have 5 out of 6 pointing up. The trend follower must be green. The yellow moving average must be above the gray moving average. The price must be above the yellow moving average. The RSI must be above the 50 line. The MACD must be above the 0 line. It must be green, and it must be above the signal line, and of course preceded by at least 2 consecutive red histogram bars. So all the rules are in place. As far as the stop goes, we would place our stop, let's say it's around 65, just on 60 pips to the gray moving average. So let's say if we placed it at 70 pips, just below that, let's see, we would achieve 70 pips actually on that first bar. So that would be our 1-to-1 reward to risk ratio achieved. Then 140 pips here. That would give us a 2-to-1 reward to risk ratio. 210 pips just here, giving us a 3-to-1 reward to risk ratio. Let's see, it goes up to about 280 pips. So that would actually just make us 280 pips, just above 280 pips. So that gives us a 4-to-1 reward to risk ratio. So for the 70 pips we risked, we generated as much as 280 pips. Now, of course, if we survived this correction and consolidation, then the trade had the opportunity to go even more, say another 110 pips or so. So that concludes this example, the swing within a trend conservative buy for a 4-hour time frame. Till next time, good trading, live well, and I'll see you soon. Hi, I'm Michael Newrock, and this is a swing within a trend conservative sell trade on the 4-hour time frame. To start with, we need the overall trend direction to be down or sell only. To have that condition in place, we need to have 4 out of the 6 high time frame indicators pointing down, at least 4. In this case, we have 4, which gives us an overall trend direction of down. The trend follower must be red. Actually, I just put my markers here on the example that I want to show you, which is this one here. The bar prior to the Trend Profiteer sell arrow being displayed on the new bar. So in this case, we have an overall trend direction of down. The trend follower is red. The yellow moving average is below the gray moving average. The RSI is below the 50. The MACD is preceded by two consecutive green histogram bars below the zero line, and then the red histogram bar that signals the bar is below the zero line and below the signal line. It's only just in this case, but that's where Trend Profiteer will be able to alert you to those trade setups without having to go over it manually. So all the rules are in place for this swing within a trend conservative sell trade. Stop loss would be above the gray or slow moving average, which is currently about 50 pips. So if we had it set at say 70 pips, that's always a good idea to be a little bit above the gray moving average. Now, this is a 4-hour trade, so the higher the time frame, the bigger the stop loss typically. So if we had then say 70 pips, we would hit our first target here, which gives us a 1-to-1 reward to risk ratio. 140 pips here, which gives us a 2-to-1 reward to risk ratio. 210 pips here, giving us a 3-to-1 reward to risk ratio, and yes, 280 pips back up here, giving us a 4-to-1 reward to risk ratio. Of course, it went down further than that, but on a 70 pip risk, on this example, we're able to extract at least a 4-to-1 reward to risk ratio of 280 pips. Actually, it did go even further down than that. So you can see, even if you were knocked out for profit earlier on, then you could still take this conservative swing within a trend trade, and that would have generated another 350 pips, as a maximum. So that concludes this example of a swing within a trend conservative sell trade for the 4-hour. Till next time, good trading, live well, and I'll see you soon.